Yeah. Now we have all kinds of sexy type robot movies.
Oh yeah, they're all over the place.
Oh yeah, you can hardly get away from them.
No,
it's like every movie has a subplot where there's a sexy robot.
They live.
Yeah.
Those were
Forrest Gump
robots. Forrest Gump. Yeah. that was a terrifying, lovely robot.
American Graffiti.
Wayne's World.
Yep, Wayne's World, which I've only seen once.
You've only seen once. What else was there? There was that Pearl Jam documentary.
Yeah,
PJ-20.
PJ-20 was the name of the robot, I think.
The robot, yeah. that's the Pearl Jam robot. They always take it on stage.
And then there was Blade Runner.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford played the sexy robot.
Yeah, the sexy robot with Harrison Ford. Oh my gosh.
Jesus Christ.
Greetings, citizens of Earth. Welcome to Accelerativ Thrust podcast. I'm Dan.
And I'm Erik.
And today we are going to be reviewing not one, not two, but three. I don't know why I keep doing that. That is so just corny, but I'm still going to keep doing it, at least with this episode, because I can't go back in time now.
Well, I can.
3 albums. Two personal picks. One from Erik, who it's a record that he's been into for, well, not probably more than just this last week, but specifically this last week, and one that I've been into particularly this last week. And also one from the Quad Cities dark psychedelic group, Dark Family. Before we get into all that, I just want to remind you all that we are on both Facebook and Instagram. If you're in a band and would like to be featured on our show as a guest, or if you would like us to review your record, or if you got any shows coming up or know of any shows coming up, or if you have a record that you would like us to review that's not a local record, message us on the page. And if you just want to say hi, go ahead and do that as well. This show is available to listen to on Transistor, Spotify, Content Made Right, Google, Amazon, and now on the YouTube.
Nice.
I will start adding the episodes, starting with the episode with Sweeping Promises and a whole bunch of other great bands that I can't think of right off the bat. And then I'm going to be adding the new episodes, not right on Thursday, the day that they get uploaded to the streaming platforms, but within a few days afterwards. And I'm going to try and make that in as much of a timely manner as possible. I'm not going to make any promises, though. And that brings us to current events. One of the least important things I'm going to start with, because I'm just going to quickly mention this. Limp Bizkit did it, ladies and gentlemen. They released a new song. It's called Dad Vibes. Didn't see that coming. I haven't heard it. So I can't really give my opinion on the Dad Vibes, but you know,
I think it probably goes like this. Like that.
Well, do you think that he actually screams about dad vibes?
Probably screams about dad bods.
Dad bots. Yeah, that's right. He's screaming about sexy dad bots.
Oh no, not dad bots. Dad bods.
Oh, bods. Okay,
but,
I thought you meant bots.
Daddy bots.
Daddy bots. Yeah,
that's somebody's kink out there.
That sounds like one of the best.
That might be my kink.
That sounds like a rapper's name right there. Daddy bots. Man.
All right.
In other news that I'm not sure how relevant this might be. I mean, to me, it's interesting, I guess. I don't know. David Lee Roth has apparently retired.
From what?
Music apparently. Music apparently, because that's what the headline says.
Gosh.
I don't even know.
What a hit. What a loss.
I don't even know when the last time I heard anything from David Lee Roth was.
I think I heard him do a bluegrass version of Jump or Panama, 10 years ago or something on like a morning show.
A bluegrass version of Jump.
Yeah, it was
a song that is
good.
solely based on a synthesizer line.
Yeah. I mean, it might have been Panama. I don't remember. But yeah, and then like cuz that was in conjunction with him supposedly about to rejoin Van Halen, and then that fell through cuz cuz he's Dave. And that's the last I've heard from him. So I don't know if we really needed the announcement. I think we all assumed.
Kind of seemed pretty obvious from the get-go, didn't it?
But I guess he can come out of retirement now, and then that will be big news.
But you know what? Congratulations, David Lee Roth. I mean, he obviously deserves it. And I gotta say that I do think David Lee Roth in rock music is one of the best charismatic frontmen ever.
I would agree. I think he's great. I really do like David Lee Roth a lot too.
Yeah. I love David Lee Roth's voice too, man.
Have you ever heard the Sonrisa Salvaje? It's the Spanish version of Eat 'em and Smile.
No, I don't think so.
It is phenomenal.
Really?
It's so good.
Was it sung by David Lee Roth?
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. It's so good. Like the Spanish version of Yankee Rose is just, I don't know. It's something miraculous. It's a beautiful thing.
So, you know, one of the things before we move on, one of the things that I got to say that I really respect about David Lee Roth is that he had the nerve to say that none of his idols, none of the people he worshiped were musical in any way whatsoever, while fronting like the biggest rock band arguably at that time that they came out, Van Halen. I mean, he said like his influences were always like Evel Knievel and guys like that. Like, and then dude, it totally shows in his stage presence that's totally makes sense. And I love the fact that he had the nerve to say that, because that there were probably people out there that were just like, he doesn't even, he's not even into music and he's fronting this band. You know what I mean? Like,
well, I think he knew his job and he knew how to do it really well. I don't know how much is that was really based on musicianship.
Right.
Nor do I think it needed to be. That's
not at all.
I guess that's what you were saying is like that. Him being an amazing vocalist, traditional musical vocalist, had very little to do with why he was on the stage.
Well, and when you're in a band with Eddie Van Halen, the music part's already covered.
Yeah.
Van Halen wouldn't have been the same band without David Lee Roth, There's just no way. Okay, now this is something that I want to get your total take on here, Eric.
Okay. All right.
So, you and I, we did an entire episode on Iron Maiden. So we know, or the listeners know, that we're pretty big Maiden fans, right?
We like them. Yeah.
We like Maiden, yes. They just released their new album, Senjutsu, which is, I think actually has a really cool cover, and it's a Samurai Eddie. And I've actually listened to some of it. It's not bad. But anyway, the review on metalsucks.com talked about how only 3 songs clock in at under 7 minutes. And it just kind of seems like maybe some of the songs are a little too slow, and they're trying to go for this epic thing, which that's actually been a thing with new Maiden records. Like, I think it was pretty much the same thing with the last record, Book of Souls and Final Frontier. I've noticed that, like, at least on the last 4 albums, the songs are all just extremely long and maybe don't necessarily seem like they need to be. And maybe that's kind of part of my issue with some of the new Maiden stuff. Don't get me wrong, I still like a lot of it, But anyway, there's a YouTuber by the name of Erraticist, and using modern technology, he decided to fix, quote unquote, those problems. And in the video description, it says, "This is for those of you who have issues with the tempo and length of the Iron Maiden album, Senjutsu. I have adjusted the tempos to all different parts of the songs and removed a lot of the repetitive parts, which brought the album from 82 minutes down to 60 minutes. And it now sounds like Brave New World era Maiden. Then he follows it up with, this was done with love and respect for Iron Maiden. And I hope you enjoy it. Up the Hirons now and forever. Now, I wanted to kind of, I wanted to touch on this because are we just living in a world now where people just, they don't like something and they just change it? Like, I don't know. Like, this seems dangerously close to like, give me what I want or else. And, you know, it's like, I don't know, man. Like, so if he's able to do this with an Iron Maiden record, I don't know. Like it's almost getting to the point where it's like, what is the point of even releasing music anymore? There are people out there that may not like this album, but there are people out there that do. I don't know, man. Like, to me, this kind of just seems like you're just messing around with somebody's artwork, and not to mention arguably one of the biggest, if not the biggest metal band. I don't know. What's your take on this?
Well, this is going to sound really weird, but sometimes my actual opinion of something is sort of trumped or usurped by a existing conviction that I have. And so like I said, I know that sounds kind of funny, but here's the thing. I'm a huge proponent of fair use. And I love people chopping up other people's music. Like I love it. I love the idea of someone taking someone else's recordings, chopping it up, making it into something else, making it a parody of itself, making it what they want to hear. Like, I really like it. And I really don't think anything is necessarily sacred enough that you shouldn't be able to kind of destroy it as art, you know? But with that being said, I don't think anything holds that much more merit than the next thing once it's a derivative. So I tried to listen through the record, Senjutsu. I can't really say it. And I thought it was fine, but I also thought, wow, this is really kind of bloated and everything.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the inkling to just make it into the record I wanted to hear. It seems to me that I would, if I wanted to hear a specific type of music or something, I would figure out a way to just make that music instead of remixing someone else's. Like, I've always had this secret dream of having a band that sounds just like the Slayer cover album, Undisputed Attitude.
Undisputed Attitude. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've always thought if that's what Slayer sounded like, they would be, I mean, I love Slayer, don't get me wrong, but that is like a different band. And it's a band I would love to hear more from, you know? And so I know I'm going off track a little bit here, but instead of just being like, well, I'm going to take all the Slayer records and turn them into that one or that sound, why wouldn't I just start a band that sounded like Undisputed Attitude era Slayer, you know? So I don't know. I guess I'm saying contradictory things, but I do love when people chop up and mess up and remix things that other people put out. But I also think that if the idea is that I'm going to make this better than the person that made it originally, I don't really see the point of that.
You know what?
You know
what, Eric?
What's that?
You just single-handedly changed my mind about the whole thing. And no, seriously, because you made me think about the music I like. And to be honest with you, this really isn't too much different than something like Negative Land did, or something that like, or even like sampling, like, and I'm also a big supporter of fair use, and I like zines. I like copy and paste zines that take sources. And also at the same time, it's not like he's taking this album and then claiming it as his own, which I think would be hilarious.
Yeah, I would almost appreciate that more.
Even more if he's like, this is my new band, Senjutsu.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Ron Maiden.
Ron Maiden.
This is my new record.
Yeah, exactly.
It's called Shih Tzu.
I probably would have appreciated right off the bat, and probably, but yeah, no, you made me think more about the situation. And actually it's kind of cool that we have access to all this stuff.
Yeah.
So I guess like the takeaway and what I'm gonna encourage everybody to do, steal everything you can.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, fuck everything I said earlier, man. I totally support this. No, seriously, I don't know what the fuck. I don't know what I was thinking. I was so wrong.
Well,
so wrong about
with that being said, let's put this to the test. Any music that I put out, fair use. Anyone
Fair
out there
use.
can use it, remix it, trash it. I don't care. Put your
Same
name
here.
on it.
With me, I same here, but with me, just give me $1 million. That's all I want.
And then do whatever you want. Who cares?
Yep. Do whatever you want as long as you give me the money. That's all I care about. If you don't, I'll sue you. Like the Nirvana baby.
Yeah.
Which, by the way,
oh God, we can't talk about the Nirvana baby.
Well, no, we're actually going to talk about Dave Grohl and a demon dog that looks like Pennywise the Clown.
Holy smokes. Okay.
But before that, let's, Dave Grohl said that he has some ideas on how to change the cover of Nevermind for the reissue.
Okay.
So I don't know. Maybe they're actually looking at a different cover for Nevermind now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Besides just a eunuch baby.
Besides just a eunuch baby.
Well,
but
we'll see. We'll see.
None of this stuff is nearly as interesting as a demon dog that looks like Pennywise the Clown.
Yeah, I saw that demon dog.
So
it kind of looks like Pennywise. He kind of looked like. Have you ever seen the Killer Clowns from Outer Space?
Yes.
Yeah, it kind of looks like one of those guys. I don't know their names. But.
And yeah, it's a demon dog that's giving its neighbors the death stare from behind a fence.
It's a scary dog.
Leaving people terrified. I have a feeling that this is like the most exaggerated article ever. My guess is that this is just a photo that someone caught, although it almost doesn't even, if you see the photo, it almost doesn't look real because it looks like somebody's just placing him over. It
looks pretty cool. I like him.
Yeah,
it kind of reminds me of like a Chuck E. Cheese character too.
Yeah. It's something weird like that. Something
like a Muppet puppet.
Yeah, creepy and eerie, and I think the reason why the Pennywise reference is there, I just think it might be because he's got like Pennywise's hair is like red, but the hair on this dog is literally like where Pennywise's hair is.
Yeah, I'm sure glad the dog doesn't have red hair.
That would make it even more eerie.
I would be pretty freaked out if I saw him.
Definitely, especially like looking over the fence like that.
Yeah, I would probably scream and then just fall on the ground laughing at how scared I was of the dog. Because you can tell by the picture that no matter what you did, he would just keep looking at you like that.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, especially if you were the one that caught that photo.
Yeah.
Like it would make it even, which I mean, somebody had to take that photo. So was it the neighbors that were terrified that were just like, hey, make sure you get this? Or was it staged where it was like, I don't know.
It looks like just a snapped photo.
Yeah. And I think it is. I don't think it was staged. I mean, nobody has a reason to do that. Well, I don't know, maybe. Who knows?
Yeah.
All right. So the last bit of news that I have here, this to me is the big one, man. This is fantastic. Also scary and interesting and funny all at the same time.
Wow. Shit.
So a man who was 50 years old, and this name I'm going to butcher, but I'm going to take a crack at it. Behan Mutlu.
I'm sure that's exactly right.
Was declared missing by his wife after going out for drinks before wandering off into the woods. This was in Kayaka, Turkey. So the concerned party contacted the police after spending hours trying to find him. It all ended well after he stumbled upon a group of volunteers in the area who were helping the authorities search for him. he inadvertently ended up joining the group of rescue workers for, I wonder how long he was doing this before not only he realized that he was looking for himself, but they were looking for him.
Wow. What was his first name again?
Behan.
So do you think Behan is such a common name that he would be going around with the search party just yelling, Behan, and not realize that it was his own name?
Yeah, maybe. Oh, you mean like the other people were yelling for Behan? Like,
yeah. Well, he was yelling it too.
Yeah.
And he's loaded too.
I never thought
right
of
from the
that.
story.
Oh,
You
wow.
can tell he's just loaded.
Okay.
And who are you looking for? Oh, this dude named Behan. Okay, let's go
totally
get him.
Dude, that would be hilarious.
Like how long was he doing it for? I wonder.
2 hours. Behan.
We're never gonna find this fucking guy.
Come on, Behan. Well, I think it'd be even funnier if like his wife was in the search party.
Right.
Didn't realize it was him.
Well, what's he look like, miss? Well, actually, he looks just like you.
He looks kind of like you, but I don't know, a little different. When I saw that, I was just like, that's pretty interesting.
Wow.
But that would be kind of scary, like, aspects of it. You're missing somebody, a missing man. That's never a good thing.
Oh my gosh.
But, things get fun. Tragedy gets fun sometimes.
Well, I hope that he has a nice sober October.
Sober October.
He earned it.
Yeah. So that brings us to album reviews for the week. Number one.
Yeah, I'll go. This record was suggested to me by Brian James from Endless Reach.
Yeah.
And also he's been a guest on our show. Yeah, he sent me a few things since we've had him on. This one was pretty different, so I decided to put it on the show itself. It's called The Lion's Daughter is the name of the band. The record is called Skin Show, and it came out just now. When Brian told me about it, he said, check this out, you might like it. It's horror themed hardcore. And so I said, okay, I'll check it out. And I would agree that seems to be the foundation of what we're hearing. Like hardcore, I would say there's other elements too, like other metal elements, maybe sludge, maybe a little black metal influence. I don't know. And then a lot of synthwave influence. And what makes this a little different than anything else I've heard is that those synthwave horror type elements, they go through the entire tracks. Usually they're not just an intro and then straight into hardcore or whatever. They actually utilize it in the songs, which is pretty cool. The thing about this is, and I'm going to talk about this on Dan's pick too, is sometimes genre is a strange, elusive, and in my opinion, sort of wrong thing. I feel like with this, when you add all the synths and electronics, it sort of ceases to be hardcore anymore. It starts to become something else. And I mean, it's very heavy music. I mean, it's straightforward, heavy music. But because of the synths, other elements, like I said, it starts to turn into something else. It's a little closer to like industrial metal. If I had to base it on the stuff I know, which is sort of the thing, is I'm not that well versed in hardcore of almost any subgenre of hardcore. I'm not that well versed in. So the things that I have to compare it to and the filter that it goes through, which is my brain, unfortunately falls on some things that other people might hear this and be like, that doesn't sound anything like that. You're just old and don't know anything, which might be absolutely right. But when I listen to it, yeah, it's super heavy. But what came to mind for me was like Fear Factory, Ministry, Godflesh, some of the later Skinny Puppy stuff. And so that's really funny because I don't think anyone else would necessarily think that's what this sounds like. I think what they'll hear is hardcore with synthwave and horror elements. I would say though that if you like industrial metal, or you like hardcore, or if you like synthwave, just straight up John Carpenter or even Argento style, like Goblin and things like that, you might really like this. It also reminded me a lot of the band Nava. They a lot of times will have synth parts going through the entire song. And I came out of it really liking it a lot, and I'll probably go back to it. But if I were to just come on here and say it's horror hardcore, it would have I would think that sounds different than what I actually heard on this record. So, yeah, what'd you think, Dan?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with pretty much everything that you said. I think the way that I would describe this record, because I kind of had a lack of really what to define this as completely, but intense, gorgeous sounding synth metal, I mean, it, which I guess, in a lot of ways, it could be industrial. There definitely is. I hear the industrial elements for sure. But there's, just really a lot of like great, just sounding synths blending with like all these different, I kind of thought that this was like, this is going to sound like an interesting, like comparison, I think, but like, if you took like Depeche Mode, John Carpenter, maybe even like Tubeway Army or the Eurythmics, because there's kind of like, I guess, ambient sort of atmospheric synthy stuff that you hear in like a lot of the Depeche Mode type stuff. And then if it like basically joined forces with High on Fire, Mastodon, and maybe even like Dimmu Borgir, because I actually heard a lot of like orchestral black metal kind of going on and then the music as well. But I definitely hear like the Ministry. The guy's voice actually reminded me at times a lot of Neil Fallon from Clutch.
Oh, sure.
From the first album, particularly Transitional Speedway League. And there's even like some songs like, okay, the song Sex Trap. That song straight up reminded me of like if The Cure just replaced Robert Smith with a metal vocalist. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous sounding stuff. But yeah, industrial, orchestral black metal. I think if you like all of the bands that were mentioned by both Erik and myself, I think that you could find something here. I went into it not knowing what to expect. The album is like, the cover doesn't really, it almost doesn't fit with what I would think the sound would be, which I think is awesome. I wasn't expecting a metal album from this, and that's totally what I got. The last song, The Chemist, I believe it's called, it actually kind of reminded me a little bit of like Mile Marker. So there was like some like kind of even a little bit of like, electronic punk, just a smudge, like, but definitely like industrial new wave. I definitely heard the John Carpenter horror influence, hands down. I bet this would be an epic band to see live.
Yeah, for sure. It would be.
Yeah, I really, really like this. And it totally makes sense to me that Brian would recommend it to you. Totally makes sense. Okay, so then that brings us to my pick for the week. And in some ways, I kind of think we picked somewhat similar records that are also in other ways absolutely completely different. Like, but the approach and the aesthetic is, I could see how some could actually make some comparisons.
I agree.
So the name of the record is Ultra Pop, and it's from this group called The Armed. I don't know anything about The Armed other than they are an anonymous collective from Detroit that have a rotating guest list of musicians that they collaborate with. And their early EPs. Now, I've listened to actually a lot of stuff from them, not just this album. Their early EPs were pretty much straight up hardcore. If you're a fan of Converge, Cave In, Coalesce, kind of that sort of stuff, I think that you would love their early EPs. But a lot more straightforward than this album, because this album is pretty much anything but straightforward. It's very evolved from that. It's not even funny. Like, I actually struggle to even think about how to describe this record.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost completely stripped away the hardcore element. And that's kind of what you think when you listen to it at first. And I think if you went back and listened to like their early EPs, you would think that from the first 3 or 4 albums, but then the hardcore element kind of starts to return, but in a completely altered form.
Mm-hmm.
This record is impressively but insanely hard to describe. Parts of it are like sort of ambient, dissonant drone pop. I mean, that's kind of the best I could come up with. But then some of it is just straight up noise rock with very dense production and a lot of synths going on that will all of a sudden break into like ambient black metal style blast beats and then kind of revert back to like, I don't know, almost like a Husker Du type thing or something. Or I have a list of bands here that I put question marks behind that I could kind of almost compare them to, but I want to say that they don't really sound like any of these bands at all. Lightning Bolt, question mark, At the Drive-In, question mark, Interpol, question mark, Atari Teenage Riot, question mark, Fugazi, question mark, My Bloody Valentine, question mark, Wolves in the Throne Room, question mark. The list goes on and on. It's like they took their favorite parts from all of these records or something and really successfully put them together. But it's such a intriguing listen and very much a blast to listen to. I don't know. I would say it's like hardcore punk presented through the filter of like electronic pop music or something, but not in like the same way that something like Atari Teenage Riot is, because Atari Teenage Riot is just straight up pretty much, when you listen to an Atari Teenage Riot, it starts at one speed and remains that speed. It starts at one repetitive feeling and it stays that feeling all the way through. This record is just, I mean, a roller coaster of just sounds and soundscapes and I don't know, genres. It's honestly, I mean, to me, this is some of the most interesting and exciting music I've heard in hardcore, because I think at the core, it is still a hardcore record, despite all the things that they kind of throw in and all the curveballs. The energy and urgency of the record really reminds me, I don't think it sounds like it, but it reminds me of the energy of Refused Shape of Punk to Come. To me, it's impossible to pick a favorite track because it works so well as one piece. They almost like the way that they structured it almost reminds me of a mixtape, kind of like in hip hop. It's just really great. And then the last track has a very interesting guest appearance from Mark Lanigan, which is awesome. I love this record. And to me, it's probably a contender for quite possibly the best record of 2021 so far for me. What did you think, Eric?
Yeah. So I'm going to say some things that sound contradictory.
Sure.
And that's okay, because I usually do anyway.
Sure.
And this is going to sound weird, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about what I heard in this record versus what I heard on this record. And I know that sounds confusing, but I'll get there, I promise. So first and foremost, I loved it. It was super fun, but it was super challenging, pretty difficult. Like the whole thing's only 38 minutes. When it got over, I could not believe that. It felt like at least twice that long to me.
Yes.
Because it's so complicated. And not only is it so complicated, but it's punishing. It's almost like power electronics as a part of the music. It's like Merzbow level white noise at times, and it's just running, kind of like the digital hardcore stuff where it's just like this constant barrage of noise. But yeah, like I said, I loved it and it was super fun, and it not only kept my interest the whole time but piqued my interest. I was like, what is going on here? And I also had to go back and listen through their other stuff because I didn't understand how we got here. If
Yeah,
this was the first release, I would understand it almost better than them having a past catalog or a back
sure.
catalog. Because if they just came out of the gate with this, I'd be like, oh, okay, I get this. I really do. It's kind of like 100 Gex meets Andrew WK. Fine. That's easy to understand. But when you're coming out of hardcore, again, this was presented to me as hardcore and I just didn't hear it. That was the connection I was talking about with the Lion's Daughter earlier. Like,
Yeah.
maybe it's just that I don't understand what hardcore is, but that on both of these records, that's not how I would have described either of them.
Hmm.
If no one had ever
Interesting.
said that word, I wouldn't have thought that. Because for me, the Armed Ultra Pop is a great name for this record because I really can't think of another way to describe what's happening here. And
Mhm.
it's almost in this tradition of how far can we push pop music before it's not pop music anymore. You know, for me, it made me think of things like the Misfits. There is literally, let me find the song title here. A Life So Wonderful is the melody from Hybrid Moments by the Misfits.
I was trying to figure out
So
what that was because I had heard that and I remember like thinking to myself, this melody is so familiar, but I don't know what it is.
So to me, it's like I said, in the tradition of these sort of pop groups that just pushed it as far as they could push it. The Misfits, the Ramones, Jesus and Mary Chain, Jay Retard, Andrew WK, Atari Teenage Riot, all of that stuff. Just in how noisy can we make this? How fast can we make this? And then the flip side of that is it's also super epic somehow.
Mhm.
Like elements of it reminded me of Enon or Polyphonic Spree or even like ELO. Like the orchestration of the whole thing is just underneath this layer of uncontrollable white noise fuzz.
Mhm.
And the whole thing, it's just assembled flawlessly. And I think it is super fun. But I would not put this on expecting to just have this feel like your summer party record. Like it's intense. And it is heavy. I mean, there are thrash level speed on this thing for like a lot of it. So, like I said, I came away from it loving it. Super interesting. I would suggest everyone give it a shot, but at the same time, expect it to be a little off-putting because I mean, it is just noise. I loved it. So don't take any of that the wrong way. You should totally check it out.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where for me, I understand. I could kind of see why it would fall under the hardcore umbrella, I guess. And a lot of that is because of that record, Refuse Shape of Punk to Come. Like there's so much going on here.
Yeah.
It's really, like Erik said, it's really difficult to like wrap your head around. Both of these records, fantastic. And I think in a lot of ways, both records are kind of similar in that way.
I agree. Yeah. I was thinking that earlier that somehow, and that's what I mean by the genre thing.
Yeah.
I guess if they're both hardcore, then that's the connection.
Now with Lion's Daughter, I got less hardcore and more metal.
Yeah. Right.
But I could totally see how neither one of those descriptions for either release totally does either one of them justice.
So that was sort of the connecting thing for me. Was like, wow, here's two things that apparently fit under the same genre umbrella. And I don't think they sound anything alike.
Yeah, no, not at all.
You know,
I don't think they sound anything alike, but I think their aesthetics are kind of similar.
Sure, I agree with that.
Now onto something that sounds completely different than the other two, but in a very good way. This is the latest album from Quad Cities band Dark Family. Now, Dark Family is a group that featured Jeremy Anderson. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Jeremy Anderson, he was also in a couple of bands, Condor and Jaybird and Sunshine. So this is, I want to say the third band that Jeremy started. And like pretty much all of Jeremy's bands, they kind of all have a very dark psychedelic pop thing kind of going on. That's sort of what Condor and Jaybird kind of set it off. And then I think Sunshine came next and Dark Family came after that. And they're all kind of similar, but also I think they're all completely different. I think when you're talking about the songwriting, Dark Family, I think, is maybe a little poppier and less proggier than Condor and Jaybird or even Sunshine. But regardless, this album is just full of, like I mentioned, 60s psychedelic pop influences. Like some of it kind of reminds me of the Rolling Stones or the Beatles, 13th Floor Elevators, Beach Boys, but I hear a lot, and this totally makes sense, of like the Brian Jonestown Massacre, who I know Jeremy's a big fan of. There's also some stuff like early Pink Floyd that kind of creeps in, but it's really, really great songwriting, very catchy, jangly in parts. There's also like a collaborative element that I hear because if I'm not mistaken, I hear a bunch of different vocalists at different times, which I think is kind of cool. Mm-hmm. Kind of a little bit of 90s alternative, I guess, dream pop sort of going on too. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking like Dandy Warhol's, or I love the track Scarlet Letter, but the entire thing, all 8 songs, really, really great to listen to. If you're into that kind of stuff, I think that this and all of the bands that Jeremy has been in, Condor and Jaybird and Sunshine, you're going to love it. They always deliver. Their records always sound great. One thing that's really impressed me is Jeremy's kind of been pretty prolific in his work over the past few years. And there's been a lot of really great songs. Yeah, I think this record is exactly what it needs to be and what it means to be, which is, like a psychedelic pop record. I know I've been repeating that over and over again, but what did you think, Erik?
Yeah, I really liked it. I was surprised at how much I liked it. And let me expound on that a little bit. When it first started, I was like, okay, I can see what's going to happen here, Mm-hmm. And instead, I was super surprised at how subtle and subdued the influences were on them. So what I mean by that is like, this is basically like throwback 60s pop, right? Mm-hmm. With a psychedelic edge to it. But the thing that I really, really liked about it, and having been in a band that was a throwback band, actually 2, I know how easy it is to just rely on the source material and just rely on those tropes and just basically take from other people. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's what's happening here. I think this is original music. I think that it's focused on the songwriting. Mm-hmm. I think it's focused on arrangement. And even without those influences, these songs can stand on their own. And that's a pretty big statement for this kind of music. Because even in the 60s, when that was happening, I would say that there were a lot of bands that when I hear them, I'm like, well, they're just trying to sound just like this band. They weren't even original, but this really does feel super original to me.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's focused on the songwriting with basically being influenced by the sounds and instruments of that time period instead of trying to emulate or have it be the foundation of what you're doing. So I think these songs are super cool.
Absolutely. They're fantastic.
Yeah. The arrangements are awesome. I like that they go a lot of places, but they don't go so many places that you lose track of the song. Again, they're serving the song. They're not serving themselves or trying to be cool or try to fit into this specific genre or whatever else. I think they really are serving the songs, which happen to be great. The playing's great. The vocal performances are great. The recording's phenomenal. Mm-hmm. The thing is, I would put this, like, this sounds to me kind of like a lot of the Elephant Six bands.
There you go. There you go. I didn't even think
Especially-
of that.
Yeah, especially like of Montreal, maybe. But even they get a little too novel.
Yeah.
But this is recorded, and I think it's recorded as well and is as good as those records by the Elephant Six bands. And that's saying a lot because those
Yeah.
songs, those albums are coveted. Those songs are those records are like holy to people.
Mhm.
They're untouchable.
Yeah.
And I think this could stand right next to those. Things that I hear in there. Yeah, the 90s kind of dream pop, shoegaze elements are there, but definitely the Zombies,
Mhm.
the Beatles, Mamas and Papas,
Mhm.
the Association, Strawberry
Armed.
Alarm Clock. Yeah, the Armed. But all of that stuff, but only in some of the ideas and sounds, not the songwriting necessarily.
Right.
Songwriting
Right.
is super unique and individual. I think it's only enhanced by the psychedelic 60s
Yeah.
element of it all. So I thought it was great. I wish I would have listened to Dark Family earlier, obviously.
Mhm.
I did have a chance to meet a couple of them, and I don't remember their names, but when I worked at the music store, and let me just say, if you guys ever want to sell that fake black Rickenbacker that has all the googly eyes glued on it, let me know because I thought that was a really cool guitar.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, good albums to listen to.
Yeah. Anyway, here come your local shows. I wasn't made aware of any new releases. So if you had one, I'm really sorry. But if you want to let me know, I'll mention it next week because, what's a week, really?
Yeah. Yeah.
So when this show comes out on Thursday, there will be a show. And I mentioned this on the last show, just so you weren't caught off guard. But Thursday, River City Collective presents Hail the Sun, Kurt Travis, Kayanashi, Body Thief, and Bouquet. That's at the Village Theater in Davenport. On Friday, the 8th, you have quite a few things to choose from here. You have Riffs for a Cure, Curse of Hail, Druids, The Edicule, and What Lies Within. I'm not exactly sure what they're raising money for, but it's obvious that it's something. Riffs for a Cure. That's at Lefty's Live Music in Des Moines. We also have Angel Bat Daweed, who just was here in Iowa City last week and gave an amazing performance from what I've heard. I wasn't here, unfortunately. Angel Bat Daweed and Kumadi. That's at Roz Talks in Rock Island. Also on Friday is Britta Bader. And then Harley and Angelia, who are part of the Femdex Collective. And that show I actually don't have a venue for. If you're interested in that, you'll have to go to Femdex Instagram page. Femdex is FEMMEDECKS. It's a collective of female DJs and electronic artists out of this area. And so I don't have more information about that. So you will have to get a hold of them. Moving on to Saturday the 9th, it's going to be Mike Vallely, who is a professional skateboarder. He lives in Des Moines now. And so he's a local artist. So Mike Vallely and the Complete Disaster. And they're going to have a few shows coming up. So you'll probably hear that more than a couple times. But that's going to be at the Lincoln Tap in Nevada. And then we got a few, guys. This is a big week. So then on Sunday the 10th, another River City Collective show. Enterprise Earth, Reaping as Modia, Rig Time, Blind Equation, and Crimson Clean Sweep. That's a big bill.
That sounds like an epic bill.
And that's going to be at the Black Hawk Room in Moline, Illinois. Again, That was Sunday the 10th. Monday the 11th. This one also is rig time. So if you love them at the last show, then go to this one too. Rig time, Gravis, Somnia, Slave Labor, Job for a Broken Back, Sooty, and the Getaways. Another huge lineup. That's going to be at Lefties Live Music in Des Moines. And that again is on the 11th. Then on Tuesday the 12th, Off with Their Heads, whom I don't know, and Canadian Rifle, whom I don't know, are playing with Rational Anthem, who are awesome, at Gabe's in Iowa City. That's on the 12th. That's everything coming up this week that I was able to find and seemed cool. So,
yeah, holy smokes, that was a lot. So plenty to do out there, man.
Yeah.
You know, go support your local scene, go out and do stuff. Make sure, like I mentioned before, steal everything in sight.
Yeah. If someone didn't want you to steal it, they wouldn't have created it.
They wouldn't have created it. Exactly.
That's the deal we make going in as artists.
Yep, exactly. Yep. And so that's the takeaway you should get from this episode, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, you
get what you get, and you don't complain about it.
You don't complain about it. Yes. Y'all have a good week now. You hear?
Bye. Oh, man. Something like a Muppet puppet.
Yeah, creepy and eerie and question mark.